a lot of people will, or a lot of influencers will urge you to focus on nutrition or exercise more. They'll have you believe that that's the most important and fundamental aspect of health. But in my opinion, it's always been circadian biology and light. I think that you cannot get away from light. Like even if you think about the level of exposure you have to each, okay, you're training a couple times a week, you're eating a couple times a day, but light's all around you. And the circadian mechanism is such that it is the foundation of human health. So if you don't have the light environment in check, if you don't have your circadian rhythm in check, and have all these things in check in accordance with the principles, then I mean it's always going to be an uphill battle. And really, I don't see people getting better if they don't have that included.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is with great pleasure I bring Sunboy episode number 2. It's been a while. I had Steven Lubka on episode 4, and it's been way too long since we talked about the health benefits of the sun and EMFs and just these sort of holistic health things that we need to be thinking about. And I have Zaid Dahhaj with me today, who has been going hard on Twitter, writing all kinds of threads, putting really great thoughts out there, and going on lots of podcasts. I'm really, really happy to have you with me today, Zaid. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for a fun discussion here about all things sunlight, EMF, whatever you want to talk about. But we're ready to bring it to the people. So yeah.
Yes, sir. And it's an important time to do that. I can say that I've been traveling around the cities recently, just in different countries even, and just the amount of bad light etiquette I see just in the infrastructure and the way that people are, acting themselves. I think there's so much that we can talk about, and a lot of things that, I didn't know just a few years ago. So really stoked to get into that. But before we dive in, why don't we just get a little bit of a background on your story? I know that you had some family history that kind of pushed you into this path of really becoming a health researcher. So could you give us a little bit of background there?
Yeah, so I always tell people when they ask about my history, like it's a very simple history from my perspective. I mean, I started playing soccer at the age of 4, pursued that competitively up to around 25, 26 years old. So I've had a long time and a lot of experience in the game. And that's always naturally inclined me to, some surface level health discussions, whether it's hydration, nutrition, so forth. And then over time, as I was actually pursuing soccer at the professional level overseas in Ireland, my father suffered from a myocardial infarction, which was his second heart attack in about a year time frame. And that sent him into a coma, and then eventually that led into his passing. And so that's what really got me obsessed with this whole realm of health from a more comprehensive perspective. And then within the past year and a half, 2 years, more of the circadian biology, sunlight discussions, and all the things that go around that.
Gotcha. And circadian biology, I think that even in itself is a term that some people may not recognize. I think that this is so, I mean, you've seen how neglected this is in just the normal healthcare protocols and just health circles in general. They don't really talk about the sun. And if they do, they say, oh yeah, that's going to give you skin cancer. So put on all these chemicals that stop you from absorbing any of it. And I've talked on this podcast before how one of my personal entry into this whole world of even thinking about health from more of a high level view was when I removed the seed oils from my diet and I stopped burning after burning badly my entire life in like Pacific Northwest sun, which is like mostly clouds. Like I was burning so easily my whole life, cut those out, and all of a sudden I was just getting tan in the sun. I just thought, this is crazy. It's like my body is reacting really positively to something that I changed. And I think a lot of people, when they make those changes and they see those positive reactions, that really gets the rabbit hole moving, gets people excited to learn more. So why don't you give just a general overview of what is circadian biology and why should people care about it?
Yeah, so I like to describe it from the perspective of, if I'm speaking to the average person, I want people to understand that the human body is a timekeeper of sorts. Every aspect of the human body is designed to sense time and sense that time in relation to space within your environment. And so if you look at circadian biology as a whole, it's just in reference to the fact that the human body has a 24-hour cycle that is controlled by the solar cycle, aka the sun. and it's also I mean, it's controlled by the light and dark cycle, but it comes down to this perspective that every single organ and cell in your body operates off of a specific clock that is linked to the circadian mechanism. And so when you consider that, there's a huge reason why I think we're seeing so many chronic disease rates surging. There's a huge reason why people are getting so sick, and it's because people have neglected the circadian mechanism, which is fundamentally stimulated through light. And so if you look at the people today, there's, in reality, as a species, we evolved to get the light and dark cycle as one coupled system. But now if you look at the environment, there's no such thing as the dark part of the equation. It's just all lit up through artificial light sources. And so I think that's a major problem. People need to understand that both the light and dark cycle are a coupled system made by nature. And those two things need to come together if we are to be healthy.
Yeah, and I think I remember you were on. I was listening to the decentralized radio podcast you were on. I think you basically said, like, circadian biology 101, you should have brighter days and darker nights. And that's going to just help get people's rhythm back in check of this natural cycle that humans have been living on for our entire existence, where our wakefulness is dictated by the sun. Like when the sun comes up, we awaken, we get sun in our eyes and on our body. It fills us with energy and vitamins. And then when the sun goes down, we get tired and we go to sleep. And we have evolved so perfectly over our history to just be in tune with that. And when you see people nowadays with their phone screen popping up, and I say these people, like, we don't all do it a little bit, but personally, I've made huge changes by just putting blue light filters on every single screen, because I think this is a good solution for people looking to make that change. Because I think most people, it's not too hard to convince them that it's not good for you to have like blue light blasting in your eyes before bed, because you can literally feel it burning. I have these memories when I was a young kid and I was just super obsessed with video games. Me and my buddies would, play Call of Duty all night, just like every other, teenage kid of my generation. And at the end of the night, my eyes would literally be burning. And I remember that feeling, and I haven't had that for as long, like a few years at least, since I started using these blue light filters. So would you say that these blue light filters, and for people that don't know, that's basically just an app that you can get on your screen, or you can wear the blue light blocker glasses that are like orange colored. How effective do you think those are at mitigating the damage from this blue light late at night that's damaging the circadian rhythm?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what resource you use. Obviously, the software is important. Like if you're using Flux or Iris or One Tap Zap, any of these features, I mean, they will, if you have them on the right setting, they will block a substantial amount of the blue light, the artificial blue light from technology. And then you mentioned blue light blockers. I do think that people need to get a dark pair of blue light blockers, whether that's dark orange or dark red. Dark red typically is way better just because it's blocking all of the blue light involved. And then what people don't consider is that you have to block artificial blue light from hitting the skin as well, because the skin actually senses light in much the same way that the eyes do, because of the presence of certain non-visual photoreceptors like melanopsin, which is a blue light detector. If you actually take a look, there's a specific graph that I've showed actually on Twitter. The skin actually contains most of the non-visual photoreceptors that we find, and so various wavelengths are hitting the skin and telling your body through these light sensing proteins about what time of day it is. And if you're wearing your blue light blockers, but you're under bright artificial light and your skin is exposed, then you're basically sending a mixed signal to your body that it's daytime when it's actually nighttime. And so that throws the entire cascade of circadian hormones and neurotransmitters off, and then that's when you lead to very serious chronic ailments, especially when done chronically.
Gotcha. And something I thought of that maybe we should do like a quick little backtrack here and just talk about what damage is actually happening from the blue light, other than I think the pretty obvious one to grasp is that it messes your sleep up, because it kind of just makes sense when we talk about how, we're not evolved to have like light in our face all the time, like after bedtime. It screws up the sleep cycle, but like you hinted at there, how it damages your skin even. Or what are what are the actual negative effects? If you could maybe just throw out a list, I'm sure you've studied this a lot. Like, why should people really care about this, even outside of the sleep side?
Well, I think that it's pretty obvious if you do like a 10, 15, 20 minute Google search on PubMed and you search artificial light at night, you'll find that artificial light at night and just artificial light in general is not only correlated but causative of a lot of the various things that we see in society, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, neurodegeneration. I mean, it's actually crazy because I think neurodegeneration and overall issues or chronic diseases with the nervous system have actually overtaken heart disease as the number one killer globally. So this is something important to consider. If we think about the brain, eyes, and skin as one unit, which we call the neuroectoderm, it's the same skin that's made when you're an embryo in your mother's womb. Artificial light damages all three of these. Let's think of them as like three legs to a stool. If you have any one that's damaged, then the other two are going to get damaged as well. And so, I think from a fundamental level, the reason why we see all of these effects is because it absolutely decimates the mitochondria. Because the mitochondria, if you look, there are five complexes within the electron transport chain. The fifth complex, they're actually these quantum nanomotors that spin efficiently in order to produce energy, which we call ATP. And there are two resources that those nanomotors use to function: red and near infrared light from the sun, and then free electrons from either grounding or food. And so artificial blue light is not a part of that equation. And that's why I usually always point to the idea that when it comes to a light wavelength, you always find it packaged with the other light wavelengths from the sun in nature. You never find them in isolation. And so problems begin to occur when we break apart that full light spectrum and focus on artificial blue light sources. I think with the exception of red and near infrared light, those seem to be okay in isolation. But again, the idea remains steady that you don't want to break apart this full light spectrum.
Yeah, and you mentioned grounding in there, and that's something I just took a note of because I'd love to touch on that a little bit later after we kind of move on past this light part. But um, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk about this more and get the message out to more people is because it makes. Could you mute your mic? The wind is picking it up whenever you're not talking. If you could hit the mute. Sick.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Um, with so many aspects of health out there, diet being the biggest one, I think people have such a religious connection to the thing that they eat, and it just quickly turns into just tribalism and fighting on the internet, and people just really defending their side, and it's very confrontational when you even mention like, oh, this food probably isn't good for you, because they've been eating it for so long. They really build a an ossified view of like that's part of their world. It's a big part of what they do. But the same thing doesn't really apply to light and sun. Like, sure, people are going to have misconceptions about it and think like, oh, like my doctor told me that the sun is bad, it's going to give me skin cancer. My dermatologist says like avoid it, use all these creams and steroids. But you basically just have to break through that, and then there isn't really further battle beyond that. And so I think it's just so important to get that message out there. And I just want to mention that because this is why I think it's so cool more people are talking about it, like yourself. um, so we talked about the damage of the blue light. It screws with your mitochondria. It screws with your circadian biology and your sleep cycles and all these things. It causes tons of damage, tons more than most people imagine. But let's talk about the sun and why it's so awesome. Because one of the things that you said in one of your podcasts, if I can pull it up here, is that sun is the most perfectly balanced package of wavelengths you can have for our health. So I'd love to hear just your elaboration on that. Like, why is it so healthy to get sun on your skin and even in your eyes, which blows a lot of people's mind. They think, oh, like that's going to make me blind. But could you maybe walk us through a little bit of why the sun's so healthy for us?
I think the best way I can get this across to people is that first of all, we are a biological system that evolved under the influence of the full light spectrum from the sun. Every other biological system on the planet falls under the same category because without the sun, we don't have life, we don't have photosynthesis, we don't have a lot of things that the sun offers. And so if we think about the fact and start from first principles that our biology has everything set up in order to absorb and receive that full light spectrum, whether it's opsins, non-visual photoreceptors, whether it's the mitochondria we're talking about, whether it's vitamin D3 via UVB specifically hitting the skin, we do need to understand that it is quite perfect. Like it meets the standard definition of perfection in terms of an input meeting a biological system for certain effects that sustain life and growth and evolution. Um, and so that's how I kind of want to get it across to people, is that yeah, there's a lot of marketing campaigns to convince you otherwise, that the sun is inherently toxic, that a tan is inherently toxic and damaging to your health. But in reality, if you look back at the history of all this, even to the early 1900s, late 1800s, it's pretty clear that we've completely reversed the narrative on this subject, because centralized medicine has been using heliotherapy since a couple hundred years to heal things like advanced stage tuberculosis, rickets. I mean, you name it. They've healed quite a few things using the full light spectrum from the sun. And so when we combine the idea that we have the remnants of our ancestors that for hundreds of millions of years to receive that full light spectrum, and then you combine the historical perspective of, okay, we've actually used the sun in the form of heliotherapy to heal many chronic ailments, then it's pretty obvious to me that we've been lied to, and that the sun is actually healthy for us. Of course, there's a lot of nuance involved, but fundamentally, it is life-giving rather than life-taking.
Yeah, and when you say heliotherapy, I don't know the history on that. I'm assuming it's just like doctors actually prescribing people to go just spend more time laying in the sun and just absorbing rays. Is that right?
Yeah, there's certain figures out there. I think one that stands out to me is Niels Ryberg Finsen. He was the first, let's say, mover and shaker to actually study the effects of sunlight on various things, such as skin conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions, and whatnot. And then you have who was the other guy's name? There was another guy who used Augusto Rollier. He used Finsen's work scientifically and then ran with it to start the first heliotherapy clinic, I believe, in Switzerland. And that basically spread like wildfire after some of the results came in, because he was healing advanced stage tuberculosis like it was nothing in 6 months. I mean, you have a 6-year-old. They even show pictures. You have a 6-year-old who comes with advanced stage tuberculosis. Within 6 months of using sunbathing and heliotherapy, he's completely healed, and he's got a great tan as well. So, I mean, this stuff is undeniable if you look back at history.
Biologically, just looking good and having glowing golden skin just can't possibly be bad for you. I just can't imagine. Like, I mean, just doesn't pass the common sense test. Like, and another thing that I wanted to throw into that was one of the most hard-hitting pieces of info I learned from Stephen Lupka. I told you I did a podcast with him really early on. Was the studies that show when you lay out in the sun or get any part of your body in the sun, I can't remember the exact details on the study. I have to go back and listen, but essentially whatever part of your body the sun is penetrating, it upregulates the function of those organs. It actually makes those organs operate better, which blew my mind. Like the sun actually penetrates through your skin and does that. Have you looked into that before?
Yeah, I actually just had a post go live on Instagram about the various nuances involved with the penetration of red and near infrared light on the skin. So, there are various degrees to which various wavelengths penetrate the skin, but if we're looking at the ones that penetrate the most, the longest wavelengths, red is going to be the second best, and then near infrared is going to penetrate the deepest. I believe it even hits bone. I think it goes like 10 to 30 centimeters within the body. So when you consider the implications of that, and you consider the fact that this red and near infrared light actually diffuses in the body and gets absorbed by the water in your system, it gets carried by the blood vessels, you can actually shine red or near infrared light, which comes from the sun. So you can actually just get sunlight on one part of the body, and that will travel to other organs as well and benefit those organs. And it's absolutely insane. Like you could look at a picture of someone who's flashing a red or near infrared light flashlight on their hand, and you actually don't see bone, because it completely diffuses throughout the body and gets carried by those blood vessels. So it's just one fun fact that's mind-blowing to me.
That is so cool. I never thought of it that way, because we all know our body is, what is it, like 70% water is a number we hear from science class or something like that. we're so full of this liquid. I never thought of that before, how the sun can actually, infuse that water with the vitamins or however it works, and it actually just improves your whole circulation. That's really, really cool. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the water inside your body, because I know that's a part of the equation as well that I've done practically zero research on. I know that you know more than I do. I'll just say that. Could you explain what part does this water play in your body? What are people getting wrong about it? How can we use this knowledge to improve our health?
I think the first thing that people get wrong about water in general from a biological perspective is that they think all water is equal. They think all water is created equal. And that's completely false, because if you look at the tap water that you find in New York City, that's going to be of a different quality than spring water that you find in Arkansas. And so you can go back into the history of certain researchers. I mean, you have Gilbert Ling, who was, I believe, the first person to postulate that water can actually be structured. And then you have the work of, I actually forget his name as a scientist, but I've referenced him a lot. But basically his study of Gerald Pollack, there we go. His study of easy water, the exclusion zone, which basically proved that water does have a structure. Water does have a specific absorption spectrum from the full light spectrum. So there are specific nanometers from the full light spectrum that water responds to in the best manner in order to facilitate this structure. It happens to be near infrared light. And then you have various things as well, such as the fact that all cells are basically integrate water as a large part of their overall function. And then, of course, the fact that you pointed out, which is like 70 to 80% of the body is water. And then you can also consider this from the point of biological semiconduction. I mean, water acts as a semiconductor. Bone acts as a semiconductor. And so when you study melanin in relation to the photoelectric effect from the sun and electrons, protons, and neutrons, I mean, this stuff goes deep, and it's incredibly fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I'm assuming there's got to be some crossover on like the water that makes up your body and the water you're putting in your mouth that you're drinking. It's obviously it all comes together. And just speaking of the difference in like quality of water everywhere you go, this is one of those things that I've just tried to not think about when I'm traveling, because it's so hard to keep it in track, especially when you're in countries outside of like the US, where you have more access to more specific types of water, good reverse osmosis, filtered water. I actually remember you said that filtered water is a little overrated, so I'd like to get your take on that. But just like quality of water in general. When I lived in New Zealand for a year, I lived in this town that was on top of an aquifer, and there is this little spigot downtown where people would just come from all around the town and just fill up their big water jugs and get this amazing fresh cold water. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I hope that more people just start thinking about the quality of water they're drinking, because tap water sucks. I hope people understand that. There's pretty much nowhere the tap water is going to be good for you. And yeah, maybe you could just give some ideas on what are your thoughts on just the state of the water that people are drinking now. Like, how bad is tap water? What steps should people be making to improve their water consumption habits? And yeah, I would love to hear that.
I mean, tap water is some of the worst stuff that you can consume, period. I think that if you look at you can actually look up the specific city that you're in, I think through the EWG website, and find all of the contaminants that are within your tap water. So if you look at most cities, almost every city in America for the most part, you'll find things like atrazine, pesticides, herbicides, things called trihalomethanes, which
Birth control is in there, I've heard. Everything. All the pharmaceuticals and drugs people flush down the toilet just ends up in a water supply. And it's terrible.
And people don't think about the fact that the average filtration systems from each city, they don't account for these drugs, and they don't account for things like birth control or certain pharmaceutical medications. So that stuff is flowing directly into the tap. And keep in mind that people are drinking from the tap multiple times a day, and they're also showering in tap water. So this is a huge problem from an absorption perspective as well. And, to your point about the the quality of spring water. I mean, it's, again, speaking about Mother Nature and where we evolved from, that's the creme de la creme of water. Contains the full spectrum of trace minerals, contains, I actually view it as a probiotic because it contains microalgae, microorganisms that are good for you. And in general, like the social aspect behind it as well, like people actually have a connection to the water that they consume from the earth. And if you also study the life cycle of spring water, it's incredible. I mean, it's naturally filtered, goes through various porous elements, again, infused with all the trace minerals, structured in vortex, and put through a vortex multiple times throughout its life cycle. So, like, from every angle, it's just a win-win for humanity as opposed to tap water.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned showering, because this is one of the ones that, as I mentioned earlier, it's so brutal to keep managed while like living a nomadic lifestyle. This is one of those things that I have at the top of my list for once I settle in somewhere and like start building a home, and just get a really good filtration system, and just see, you know I've just heard so many stories of people doing that, and they just feel their skin health improve. They feel just better overall, because people don't understand how absorbent our skin is. There's this video, I can't remember if it's from a movie or documentary or something, of a guy literally putting his hand, I can't remember exactly. Do you know what I'm talking about? A guy puts his hand in a cup of water, and it basically completely changes the makeup of the water, which basically says his hand in like 1 second absorbed all the stuff that was in the water.
This is an eye-opening demonstration of chemicals in your water. Unfiltered tap water, which we will pour in 2 glasses. OTO chemical, test for chlorine, very sensitive for it. 10 drops. Notice it turning yellow, the evidence of chlorine. No chlorine in this water. Where did that chemical go? While I was testing this glass over 10 seconds, all that chemistry went into my skin and my hands. The evidence is clear. There are 80,000 unstudied and unregulated chemicals in our tap water. This was a very simple and clear example of what happens when you simply take a shower or wash your hands. Those chemicals get absorbed quickly, readily, and completely into our skin, causing all sorts of health issues, from as simple as brittle hair and dry skin to respiratory issues and even cancer.
Your skin absorbs everything. It's like an open sponge. It's permeable. So, knowing this knowledge of how bad tap water is, and like needing to take showers once in a while so I don't smell terrible, it's, being in Colombia right now, you're not going to have like the best water quality everywhere you go, like bounce around hostels and Airbnbs like I'm doing. And I'm sure tons of other people have life situations where it's not super easy to do that. One of the tips, or just the strategies I've implemented, I recommend it to other people who are also sort of trying to limit their tap water usage from showers, is I started doing cold showers, because I've heard there's so many good benefits about that. I don't know if you've researched that at all, but it's really good for you, and it definitely makes you take a shorter shower. So I spend much less time in there. I'm much more efficient. I'm in, I'm out, and I'm done. And it minimizes your exposure greatly. So that's another tip to throw out there. Have you gotten in the cold shower train at all?
Yeah, I've gone into the ice bath train. I actually have something called the ice pod over here in the backyard. But I think that cold thermogenesis and cold exposure is fantastic if done correctly. And also, to your point about the cold showers, another thing that people don't understand is that a lot of the problem that we see is not only the absorption of the chemicals within tap water and through the skin, but also if you heat that tap water up, it creates these toxic compounds, these cancerous causing compounds known as trihalomethanes. And those are the result of various combinations such as ammonia and chlorine. And those are just absolutely terrible for your health, because not only are you absorbing that through the skin, but you're also getting that condensation, to say the least, from the heat into the lungs, into the alveoli of the lungs, the little tiny air sacs. And so I think that's a huge problem that not many people discuss as well.
That's super interesting. I didn't know that. That hot, like I did assume that, if it's steaming, you're then inhaling more, so that's bad. I didn't know that it actually, was worse for your skin as well. So that's very interesting. Another good reason to get out of that habit. I mean, just it's one of those habits that, everyone loves the feeling of a steaming hot shower. I mean, everyone just thinks that feels so good, but it's one of those things that once you make the change and get through those first couple weeks of brutality of just hating it, which is, I mean, you just feel like a cat in water, just like, get me out of here. But once you get through those first couple weeks of, I guess, suffering, I would say, it gets so much easier and you get used to it and you start to enjoy it because you really feel so good after you're done. It really gives you a jolt of energy. Highly recommend it for people to try out. One of the things that I did when I was getting started and it was a little bit tough was just bring a speaker in there with me and just blasting some music and just getting into the music and just jamming and dancing and just like not thinking about how cold it was. And it's over in no time. I mean, just a few minutes or less and you're good. You've talked about the sauna as well, right? Like the dynamic of having cold exposure and heat exposure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, because sauna is one of the things I have never gotten into my routine, and I have it definitely on my list for my future house. I want to have both of them because I've heard so many good things, but what are your thoughts on saunas as well?
Yeah, I absolutely love saunas in general. I think there's a hierarchy to saunas. So you have dry saunas, steam saunas, and then my personal favorite, the infrared sauna, because not only do you get the heat therapy, you also get the benefits of infrared light and red light onto the skin and through your system. Um, it's really the natural duality of man, in my opinion, to experience colder temperatures and then to experience hotter temperatures. The problem with people today is that we're domesticated in the sense that we're always in 70-degree AC controlled environments. And as a result, people are now afraid to be under colder circumstances. I mean, people will complain about 65-degree weather like it's below, zero. So in general, just developing that adaptation in the same way that you would develop that adaptation with exercise or sunlight exposure or anything else, just getting that temperature variation to then develop better overall health is very important. And the scientific evidence shows a lot of this stuff and backs a lot of this stuff up. I mean, cold therapy from the perspective of cold shock proteins, heat therapy with heat shock proteins. And so, that natural duality is almost etched into the fabric of our biology.
When you say cold and heat shock proteins, what is that? What does that mean?
I mean, these are essentially just
Go ahead,
these are essentially just molecules that are produced in response to a quote unquote extreme environment that you're exposed to. So cold shock proteins, heat shock proteins, I mean, they show various benefits, anti-inflammatory, antiviral. There's a lot to it, but at the end of the day, these are compounds that are produced based off of a specific stressor using the concept of hormesis to then produce a certain benefit from a health perspective.
Zaid, the timing has called. I have the sun on my face right now. Anyone watching a video can see this. It's beautiful. This is the perfect transition. I believe I replied on one of your tweets recently asking you about sun gazing, and you sent me a thread that's super in depth, and I will put that in the show notes. But can you explain to me this concept of literally looking toward the sun? Because most people will think, all right, like I get sun on my skin, but sun in my eyes, that has to be bad for me. I like when you look at it for too long, it like burns. That you see the spot when you look at other things is like this has to be damaging me. So what is this concept of Actually, maybe let's start with just eyes and sun in general. Like, why should people be thinking about getting sunlight in their eyes in the first place? I know you talk about how people should do that early in the day if possible. So, if you just explain like the benefits of getting sun in your eyes, and then maybe we could go into like the more hardcore conversation of like the actual looking at the sun as we go through the conversation.
Yeah, so we have to start with the biology of the eye. A lot of people are not, they don't think about the fundamental principles that biology has built when it comes to the ocular system. And so within the eye, you have those non-visual photoreceptors, those opsins, that are designed to sense specific wavelengths of light. You have melanopsin, the blue light sensor. You have rhodopsin, a green light sensor. And then you have various other ones. You have mitochondria in the eye, which, again, operate on red and near-infrared light from the sun. And then you have melanin, actually, within the eye as well. And so the entire system, from the ocular perspective, is designed to get natural light from the sun. Now, when it comes to the nuance of sun gazing, I think what people think about is staring at the sun when it's like midday. That's terrible. Don't do that. That's definitely going to damage your eyes. What I'm advocating for when it comes to sun gazing is looking at the sun progressively, building up your tolerance for it when the sun is right at the horizon. So sunrise and sunset are the key times here. And you do have to build up to it, because for some, if you never do it, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. So really you have to start with like 10 seconds at a time. And then from there, progressively build up in the same way that you would a tan. And if we're talking about the benefits, I mean, it's responsible for systemic regeneration, especially eye regeneration, because with the angle of the sun's light in relation to the atmosphere, because it's at that angle, it's actually striking the earth at a specific way to then scatter a lot of the other light wavelengths, including blue and green. And so it's mainly focusing orange and red light wavelengths onto or into the environment. And so that's why I really say it's systemic regeneration, because it's like red light therapy on crack. Like if you take your strongest red light therapy panel, it's nothing. It doesn't even hold a candle in comparison to sunrise and sunset. And so that's not even including all the other benefits as well.
Yeah, and just to vouch, I've definitely seen tons of cases of people implementing this very carefully, as you said, at the right time and very gradually, and getting, being outside early in the day to start their day, ideally, just getting a little bit of sunlight in the eyes, not looking directly at it, like you said, when it's still like high in the sky, actually improving their vision and like getting rid of their glasses, or at least reducing their prescription of their glasses, and just having their minds blown. Like, how is this possible? Because we're always told that our eyesight only gets worse over time. It never gets better. We can't improve it. And that's a whole rabbit hole in itself. I made a thread of my own, mostly just compiling a bunch of, comments that people sent me about this. I asked a while back on Twitter, but there's tons of evidence of this ability to improve your eyesight through, different means. And that's maybe something we could get into in a minute after we get off of this, is just other things other than the sun. But a couple quick speedy questions about the sun gazing part. So just to clarify, when it's right on the horizon, so you're talking like the very last minute, you can barely see it there. It just doesn't have those blue rays that you're saying. Those are the part that are the damaging part to your eye.
Well, I mean, there's more nuance to it. I think that generally within the first 30 to 40 minutes of sunrise, and then the last 30 to 40 minutes of sunset is
okay,
really,
so pretty decent range, not just like the last minute before it crosses over, but you got some time.
Yeah, I mean, think about people who gather around a beautiful sunrise or sunset. Like, that's kind of the practice that I'm aiming for, of course, without sunglasses or contact lenses or any of that. That's where you see a lot of the systemic regeneration from a circadian perspective, due to that what they call the Rayleigh scattering phenomenon, which is how the light interacts with the atmosphere and then scatters all the other light wavelengths, and then primarily focuses red and near infrared light. Now, actually, when the sun is out for all of the day, about 50 to 55% of that sunlight is red and near infrared light. So even if you're outside during the midday, you're still getting some incredible benefit. And that's not even to take into account the UV light. Violet light has actually been shown to suppress myopia altogether by activating a gene known as the EGR1 gene. And so if we're thinking about regenerating eyesight, we have to have a comprehensive perspective with watching sunrise, making sure you have a good light environment during the day, and then strictly blocking artificial light after sunset as well. That's a key point too.
Gotcha. And I will, again, I'll put your thread in the show notes that you wrote all about that, because I really just thought that was an incredibly fascinating resource and just full of great information. So everyone check that out. This is not health advice. Don't go stare at the sun and get mad at us. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely something there to research and dig into for people who maybe, have bad vision and would like to try something that could make it better. And it has made it better for a lot of people. So I think that's super exciting stuff, because I've been blessed with pretty good eyesight my whole life, knock on wood. But I still want to do these things to, keep that or even improve it as much as I can throughout my whole life. I don't ever want to have to wear glasses. Like if I do, I don't want it to be like, I'm trying to say, I want my eyesight to be good. Everyone wants good vision. I mean, just to be able to see things, like it's so easy to take for granted. And on that topic, you spoke a little bit about this. I'm not sure how many other like strategies you've looked at outside of the sun side, but one of the things that I talked with Steven about, and I've started doing this myself more and more, is just focus exercises, like looking at something that's really close and then far away, really close, far away, and just go back and forth, like you're doing reps at the gym, and that is just giving your eyes such a good workout of like all these different focus ranges. And I think this is a big reason why so many young people are having glasses at like 13 years old right now, because they're just looking at screens and things right in front of them for their whole upbringing. Like, I mean, it's so sad to think about how many kids these days never even look at the horizon. Like they pretty much wake up from bed, they get into the school bus or the car, they drive to school, and they're instantly in a classroom. And this is like their whole worldview. It's things that are either right in their face or they're inside a room. They're never looking at a horizon or looking far away. And so this is why I've been really trying to do this hard. And for people on video, I think I can just show you on my laptop here. The place I'm living right now is perfect for this. Oh, it's probably too bright for you to see it in the video, but there's a mountain over there in the distance. I'm in Medellin right now, which is a beautiful city in Colombia that has mountains all around it. And something I've been trying to do more and more often is just setting something up on this little balcony I have and just doing that, looking at the mountain, looking at my cup, looking at the mountain, looking at my cup. And I find it's like taxing actually when you do that for a while. It feels like a workout. My vision gets a little blurry after doing several sets of that. Have you ever done things like this before, or like advised your clients that at all, or explored it?
I've explored the Bates method kind of, at a surface level. I think that there's a lot of value in the Bates method. I've heard a lot of good things about people who've implemented it. I'm more focused on the light aspect of it because I do think it's a powerful a powerful lever that not many people are thinking about, especially considering that most people are living under toxic artificial blue light. They're not getting outside because of all the conventional messaging around sunlight exposure and whatnot. But even just looking out into a distance is very interesting, because that's actually where your eye completely relaxes, as opposed to looking at something straight up. And so it's interesting to run yourself through that entire range and approach it like exercise, because we need to consider that the eyes are a muscle. So they do need to be exercised in a certain fashion. And if you don't, whatever you don't use, you lose. And so I find an immense value in that. And I kind of do it naturally. I mean, I try to get out into nature as much as possible. When you're out in nature and you're not staring at your phone, it's just baked into the whole equation. Like you're naturally looking at far away into the distance. You're naturally looking at a leaf or an animal. And so that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah, and this is just such a common factor, and all these things we're talking about is just reconnecting to the way that we naturally were in nature as best we can, and trying to get away from these modern habits and changes we made. A huge one being just being addicted to screens. I think that really applies to every one of these things we've been talking about so far. It's bad for your light. It's bad for your eyes. We haven't even gotten into the EMF part of it yet. Maybe that could be sort of the next thing we transition into. I didn't dig into your work on that as much as I wish I could have. Could you give me just an overview of what are EMFs and why should people care about them?
Yeah, sure. So, EMFs, I mean, it's an abbreviation for electromagnetic frequencies, but we need to consider that there's a duality to this. So you have natural EMFs that come from the earth, things like the Schumann resonance, the electrical storms, things of that nature, and then you have non-native man-made EMF. So this isn't something that I would label myself as so experienced on. It's something that I've dived into to a certain degree, but we need to consider that when it comes to the whole range of the electromagnetic spectrum, there are inputs that are healthy for us from an electromagnetic perspective, and there are inputs that are not healthy for us. So if I were to label a few examples, one of the healthy examples is sunlight. It's a natural form of EMF. And then grounding is also a natural form of EMF because it's connecting you to the global circuit of the earth. And so you're connected to then gather all of the free electrons through your body. But if we're looking at bad examples, I mean, obviously you have radio frequencies from technology, you have 5G, you have various sources that are inherently damaging to our system because, again, we work at the electromagnetic level first before we are biochemical. And so we need to understand that, for example, the mitochondria actually evolved to sense natural EMF. So what happens when you throw a non-native man-made source of EMF that is stronger, even of smaller input power, that's actually more destructive? What are the second and third order consequences of that on a system that works at the quantum level? Like, we have to consider these things from that perspective, because even a small input, this is what we refer to as a nonlinear function. Even a small input has a massive effect on our system from a biological standpoint. So that's how I want to get people, really introduced to the whole EMF topic.
Yeah, and this is something where there's definitely some controversy, even through like our Twitter Science Bro friends. One of the things in there you mentioned was 5G, and I know that is something that everyone seems to have some opinion on. You're either like frying yourself if you're anywhere near a 5G tower, or you're a crazy conspiracy theorist and it's totally fine. So where do you stand on that? What do you think about 5G, and who's actually right in that discussion?
On a personal level, I think that 5G is extremely damaging to the human body from many different perspectives. I mean, I believe it destroys the mitochondria from the research that we have. I believe it destroys the non-visual photoreceptors. It destroys the interaction between sunlight and your skin, because your skin has these things called topological insulators, and then that completely messes up the entire system by messing up the interaction with the skin at first. And so, listen, I mean, the 5G thing is not something that I've dived into too deep, as opposed to people like Beef and Bitcoin, Tristan, my good friend, who seems to be an expert in that realm. He focuses a lot of his effort and energy on that.
I want to get him on. He said he was down. We need to make it happen because I know he's awesome.
Yeah, he knows so much about this, and he's an electrical engineer, at least used to be. So he's got skin in the game. But I will tell you that it just completely decimates your ability to function at the cellular level. And if you destroy your cells in mitochondria, then you can kiss good health goodbye, because the mitochondria are really the foundation for good health.
Yeah, and I mean, just thinking about this from where the incentives are, and like the powers that be out there that would want certain information to be known and not known, I really invite people to just ask themselves some more questions about why is it when I Google 5G, every single article is like, oh, it's totally fine. These people are crazy. Like, it's no worries. And all the people funding the studies that quote unquote that quote unquote prove that, they're all funded by these huge big tech firms that really don't want people to ask too many questions about their technology. They just want them to keep buying the new iPhone, buy more computers, more TVs, have a million G Wi-Fi everywhere you go, just so you're constantly connected, because that helps their business. And it does not help their business for people to, think about their health and question whether they should be having these things. One of the things I believe I remember you talking about was AirPods. And I'm really excited to hear your take on that, because I have been strictly wired headphones only forever. I've never used wireless earbuds because they always just sounded sketchy to me. I don't want something that is wireless on my brain, like attached to my brain. And I've seen quite a few videos of people just experimenting with an EMF reader using AirPods, and they are absolutely terrible. They're so full of this radiation that it blows my mind that so many people are just wearing these things without even questioning anything. They just don't think about it. I even see like a lot of the podcasts I follow with like really smart doctors and health people wearing AirPods, and it just seems terrible to me. It doesn't make sense. Am I crazy, or what's going on with AirPods? Give me some of your insights here.
Yeah, no, I mean you're not crazy at all. I think that this is one of the under discussed areas of health, because again, like where do you see your average Instagram influencer talking about non-native EMFs and their effect on quantum mechanics and quantum biology? Like you just don't see that, because the market for that is really like it's so niche right now, and people are not interested in that. They want to focus on nutrition and exercise and whatnot. But I believe AirPods are probably the most detrimental piece of technology out there, believe it or not. So, when you put an AirPod in, you have one here, one here. That signal, that 2.4 gigahertz signal, that's Bluetooth, is not going over your head. It's going straight through your skull. And so when you consider that fact, when you consider that non-native EMF has a damaging effect on melanin sheets, which are, by the way, in your cochlea, your ear canal, and in your brain, then we get into some very scary territory, because if you start destroying melanin, then you basically open the door for chronic disease, especially neurodegeneration, which is why I think neurodegeneration, dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all of these things are skyrocketing today because of the introduction of AirPods and the AR VR headsets, Apple Vision Pro and whatnot. So those are just a few perspectives, and I think that it also destroys the mitochondria as well by just disrupting the overall process with calcium and just causing cellular death. And so when you hear about people who wear AirPods a lot and they start complaining about things like tinnitus or headaches or brain fog, those are just a few short-term acute symptoms as to what that non-native EMF and Bluetooth is doing by going straight through the head.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things too where when people were always going to come out and say, where are the studies that show this? And people need to understand that studies are expensive. There's often a lot of like ethical hoops you have to jump through to like run these. They're extremely expensive. And who is going to fund a study that removes products from the market? Nobody. Like, this is the question is, I don't know what the solution to that is, of, getting more money towards studies that actually help people rather than just sell them a product, which it seems like every study out there. Like I do a lot of research in the health field as well. This is constantly out there. Like, every study you'll find on seed oils is like, oh, they're totally fine. Go keep eating, the processed junk, because that's where all the money is. The big food companies fund the studies. If the study doesn't magically come up with the conclusion that they want, it gets thrown out. And I don't know if you've read The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. That's like one of my favorite books out there on this. I had her on a podcast early on, and it basically walks through how this happens in the health field. And it's very similar across, like, whether it's diet or EMFs like this. This is just where people need to use some common sense. And like I said, hopefully someday we'll get some good studies out of that, but I don't know how we're going to get there. In the meantime, I feel like it's better safe than sorry. And I'm going to stick with my wired gang headphones. It's probably even better to do what you're doing and have nothing on your head that's attached to an electronic device. Imagine I'm taking a little trace amounts in from even doing this. but you got to pick your poison sometimes, do your best where you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even moving away from wired headphones as much as I can because you're still getting a little bit of EMF there. I think it's a decent amount, nothing compared to AirPods certainly, or any Bluetooth headphones. But over time that adds up. And really, the most important thing with non-native EMF is just making sure you mitigate not only the frequency but the duration at which you use these things to then reduce any damage from them. And so I think and people will usually say, oh, you have to be balanced, you have to have a moderate approach to these things, but I'm like, when it comes to non-native EMF on biological systems, there's no moderation whatsoever. You need to absolutely be strict and ruthless about making sure you're away from this stuff because it has that dramatic of an effect. The problem is people just don't understand biology to a certain degree to understand how native EMF fits into that picture and how it damages the body.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you've heard these before, but I actually got these headphones, I think like a couple of years ago, that were called like air tube headphones, where there's like a tube of air that comes right out of the ear cup that's, like a foot long or something, I forget. And the idea for that is that you're no longer like directly wired from the headphones to the computer or the phone. And that is like a really good way to reduce it a lot. And unfortunately, the ones I got, they're kind of junk and they're kind of expensive, so they didn't work very well, and I ended up, tossing them. But I am very optimistic. There are more companies out there that are, realizing that there is a demand for this. These alternatives to the products we normally use, like, there's, EMF blocking mats that you can put under your laptop so it doesn't, just go straight into your lap, which is terrible. And there's like types of underwear I've seen that are like EMF blocking. And I'm not sure how much you've sort of looked into that whole market of just, EMF blocking stuff. I'm sure there's unfortunately probably some scams out there, I would assume, because, with any new market, it's going to take some time for things to get ironed out and people to figure out what the real and what the chaff is. But have you looked into any of that stuff? Anything you'd recommend to people?
Yeah, I used to actually play around with a lot of the EMF blocking stuff. I actually bought some of those little stickers that you stick onto your laptop or phone from a company called ZAID'S. But after talking to Tristan, after talking to a few people and gaining more education in this realm, I think that 99% of the stuff on the market with EMF blocking is just useless. Because if it was designed to block all EMF, then your technology wouldn't work. Period. You would basically be in a permanent Faraday cage. And so this is really where education allows you to avoid any manipulation. And, it's not to say that companies aren't necessarily trying to manipulate you or scam you out of your money. It's just that the education around EMF and non-native EMF is just very sparse. So, yeah, I would say avoid that and generally just ground, get into nature as much as possible. Use the inverse square law, which dictates that, distance allows a huge drop off in the effect and things like that.
Absolutely agree with that. And it's really exciting to just see more and more voices coming out and talking about this, because that's what it's going to take. The more people talking about it, the more demand there is for, solutions to come out, for good products to come out, for more research to come out. It's going to continue developing in a positive way as long as we just keep pushing this message out, which is why I have you here today. I'm super excited that you're, building a name for yourself on Twitter, getting that word out, and I'm doing my best to do the same. I think that just getting more people to think about this is the first step. So really awesome. And you mentioned grounding is one of those pieces we've been sort of dancing around for a while here. I'd love to talk about that. Could you give me, just like we've been doing for all these other ones, sort of a one-on-one overview on this idea of grounding? What is it, and why should people be doing it more often?
So grounding is super simple in practice. I think it just comes down to taking your bare shoes off and placing your feet on a natural conductive earth surface. So you could even do your hands as well, any part of the body it works for. But if we're talking about a natural conductive earth surface, I mean, this is sand, so you could do it at the beach, grass, rock, even cement, because cement is made out of water in certain types of rock. So, there are a lot of places that you can apply this concept of grounding. But if we're talking about the reason why you want to do this is because of a system in the body known as the living matrix. So the living matrix is made out of ground substance and collagen, both of which have semiconductive potential. And when you place your bare feet or hands onto a natural conductive or surface, this allows you to connect to the global Earth circuit, which then transfers free electrons into your overall system. And it does that through your sweat glands, which actually have a conductive solution of sodium chloride and potassium. And so if we think about the free electrons, which are anti-inflammatory, just incredible array of applications from a health perspective, then that is probably the easiest way to bring yourself into a natural state of health when it comes to overall charge and semi-conduction. And so I think, I threw around a lot of bigger words, but it's just connecting yourself to the earth as we've always done over the course of hundreds of thousands of years. That's all it is. And like I said, we are electromagnetic first before we are biochemical. So, this makes up the basis of all reality: electrons, protons, and neutrons. We have something called the electron transport chain, not, as people focus on nutrition, not the protein, fat, and carbohydrate transport chain. So, those are some various things that come to mind, but basically just connecting yourself to the bare earth surface.
Yeah, and this one was such a mind-blowing one for me. I'm so glad I fell into this rabbit hole, because I think I know the majority of the earth or people just think that this is some sort of hippy-dippy type stuff. Like, oh, you're one with the earth, bro. Like, you're walk around barefoot, because it's like an excuse to just feel like a hippie. But no, it's like, this is so good for you, because like you said, and you can explain the science better than I can, but essentially, like, the earth is this big electromagnetic force. It's like literally sucking the free radicals out of you and actually reducing the inflammation in your body and giving you all sorts of benefits. And I highly recommend anyone who wants to learn more about this. There's a great documentary called The Earthing Movie. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's free on YouTube last I looked. It's been there for years. So check that out. It walks through everything. It goes through all kinds of stories where people fix crazy health conditions by doing this, literally just by putting their feet in the sand and just standing there. And I remember they talked about a story that one of the main guys who is in it talked about how when he was younger, he watched, I think it was some Indian ritual or something, where someone was very sick and they just buried them basically up to their neck in the dirt. And it just cured these diseases from them, because they were like so fully grounded. The earth just so powerfully sucked all that inflammation out of them that it cured them of all sorts of problems. And I think anyone knows that if you just go run around on a beach and go swimming in the ocean, it's impossible to have a bad time. Like, you feel amazing. You're having so much fun. And I don't think people give enough credence to the actual scientific reason for that, which is that, you're having the bad sucked out of you. And maybe you could like put a little bit of elaboration on this. I keep using these fluffy words that are so vague. Sucking the badness out of you, like the inflammation in the it's the free radicals it removes from you, right? Like the electrons from the earth pull the free radicals out. Is that correct, or am I off?
No, you got the point. It's basically it puts you in a state of balance when it comes to, your level of inflammation and your level of free radical exposure. So, if I think the best way to get this across to people is to literally have people get skin in the game. So, for people who are doubtful, go to PubMed, go to the search bar, and then enter grounding or earthing. And you will find an incredible array of studies, everything from reducing blood viscosity, which is just blood thickness, all the way to wound healing, to bone repair, to overall recovery from surgery, to better sleep, to better mood, anti-depression, anti-anxiety. It touches absolutely everything for good reason, because this is basically the underpinnings of the biological system involved with our health. So, there's a lot to it, but again, I think it's just getting people over the hump of like it not being hippy dippy. Like, it's not. It's actually backed by the scientific literature, and I think that's the most important thing to get across to people.
Yeah, for sure. It just feels good to just get your like, we all have those memories of just running around in the grass barefoot as kids, but it seems like the further most people go through life, the less they do stuff like that. the more they just always have these shoes on, these weird, as Paul, my buddy Paul Keating, I'm not sure if you know him, foot prisons is what he calls them. We just have these, things wrapped around our feet that prevent us from ever touching the earth, and we never thought, like, are we losing something from that? And that's why this movement of just going back to being barefoot and just walking on the ground is so awesome, because it feels right. There, like you said, the science backs it up. And man, everyone out there, I just encourage you. There's pretty much nowhere that you can't do this. Even if you're in the city, I can still find little patches of grass around the city. Like there's parks you can go to. Look out for dog shit, but but get your grounding in, because it's good for you. It's good. I Here's a question for you. I always felt like, I never did the research on this, but I feel like the beach and just swimming in the ocean has to be the ultimate spot, because the water conductivity is just like a super ultra charger. Am I on point on that, or what? Like, is that the best? Because I feel when I'm in the ocean, I go to Cancun quite a bit. I have a friend that runs a co-living house down there, and the beaches are incredible. The water is the most perfect temperature. I swear, when I go just lay in that Mexican water, nothing in the world matters. Like, all of the sadness drifts away. I feel amazing. I feel so good and happy. Like, there's got to be something there. Tell me there's something there, Zaid.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So swimming in natural bodies of water is considered grounding as well, and I would say it's grounding on crack because, again, like you're just the this game is all about semiconduction, and I think that water being a semiconductor, and you considering the power of a natural body of water such as the ocean or river or lake, stream, whatever you have, that's very important when it comes to getting those free electrons into the body and then enacting all of these health benefits. So in my opinion, I've always said that the beach is the perfect place to be because you have the grounding, you have the sunlight. The grounding actually better helps you able to absorb the full light spectrum from the sunlight as well. And then you have swimming in the ocean for all of its, trace mineral properties, magnesium, overall stress reduction. I mean, again, there's nothing that beats the beach for me, which is why ideally I try to live next to it. So
Yeah, it's always so sad for me when I'm not by the ocean. I grew up on an island on a couple hours north of Seattle, so I've always just had the beach nearby, and it was such a huge part of my upbringing that uh, I'm always called to it. Like right now, I'm in Colombia, like I said, not near the coast, and I miss it, man. I want to be by the beach. It's always sort of pulling me back. So I think there's really something to that. Even people that have never lived by the beach before, they have to go visit. It's a magical place. It's Seeing it in movies is not the same. You got to be there and just absorb that nature and just be one with the sand and the water and the earth. There's really powerful things going on there when you do that, and I think that people really need to. Just finding any nature is good. And this is actually a question I was going to ask you, because during my travels, it has been a little bit of a black pilling on a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of just the overall infrastructure and how hard it is to do some of these things, no matter how much you want to. One example is, hope you can't hear the helicopter in the background. Um, Lights, blue lights. We talk about how that's terrible. You shouldn't be getting it at nighttime. Well, pretty much every city at nighttime, if you try to go for a walk, you're just getting blasted by these like super blue light, LEDs everywhere. And so that would be, I think, one of the things I've been thinking about is I need to get some blue blocker glasses for that reason, because I'm good at using the F dot Lux, like you mentioned, for my computer screen, and Twilight on my Android phone to totally red everything out. But you can't even walk around outside without getting this stuff on you now. So it's tough. And EMFs, in the city, everywhere, freaking everywhere. Like, the 5G towers are all over the place now. And like you said, those are sketch. The air that you're breathing in the city is just all these exhaust fumes from all the cars driving everywhere. It just seems like there is a certain level of impossibility to being optimally healthy if you're in a city, period. Would you agree with that? Or Like, what's your sense on like the city life? Are you optimistic that change will happen, that will make it easier for people to be healthy there, or is it always going to be really difficult?
I'm more on the end of that. It's always going to be more difficult because it's what centralized medicine has done is it's basically convinced people that the defect is in them instead of the environment if they suffer with any symptoms or a chronic disease. My position is that the defect is in the environment. So if you have an environment that is fundamentally producing some level of sickness, then you cannot heal in that environment. So you have to get out of the environment. And so if you look at cities these days, I mean, again, blasted with artificial blue light from every angle that you see, 5G transmitters everywhere you go, air pollution, you have crap food, you have people staying up late. In general, the overall disposition of a city, especially a big city, is to be running on cortisol, to be high stress, and so none of this is conducive to overall health. So, I do take more of a quote unquote negative view. I do just think it's more a realistic view, but being more in touch with nature is really the go-to. And this doesn't even have to be like, you don't have to go to a mountaintop to be healthy. Like, you can just live in the suburbs and then have all these things in place to then to get back to a state of health. But I mean, in the city, you're fighting an uphill battle, especially if you're in one of the bigger cities like LA or New York.
Yeah, and like there's some lucky places. Like Seattle was always my home city, and there's tons of nature nearby there. So just 20-minute drive, and you're basically in the mountains. So I would just say for people who don't feel healthy, if they're just really stressed out, have some sort of health issues that are just really persistent and they're struggling to shake, I think that a lot of the things that we mentioned today, just taking, save up your 2 weeks if you're at a job that you can't quit right away, and just going out and finding a cabin in nature and just turning off all the Wi-Fi, getting sun on yourself every morning, barefoot walking in the dirt, and just putting all of these things into motion and seeing what that does. I think people would be shocked at how much better they feel, because we're so just born into this. Like I said earlier, from childhood, basically, like we're pretty much, starting out right away, like just going to freaking preschool where we're not getting any light, or, many people, very little nature. People are just like their entire life has been in the city a lot of the time, and they've never felt what it's like to like reconnect with nature. And I think that'll fix so many of the problems we have. And it's so important for people to just know what good feels like. And I really recommend folks to just get out there and make it happen any way you can. If you're not feeling well, I think that's very important to just give all these things a try we've been chatting about. I know we've been all over the place. I took some notes here. We got get more sun, improve your water source, drinking and showering, reduce your EMF exposure as much as possible, grounding. These are all, I think, such attainable goals for people to at least work toward and start, tweaking and seeing how it affects you. And I'm super excited to be out there spreading this message with you, sir. I think this would be a really good, like pretty short, like 1 hour episode. So I think we can sort of wrap it up here to keep it bite sized. Is there anything else that you'd love to throw into that mix that you think people need to hear if they're looking to improve their health?
Yeah, I would probably say that a lot of people or a lot of influencers will urge you to focus on nutrition or exercise more. They'll have you believe that that's the most important and fundamental aspect of health. But in my opinion, it's always been circadian biology and light. I think that you cannot get away from light. Like, even if you think about the level of exposure you have to each, okay, you're training a couple times a week, you're eating a couple times a day, but light's all around you. And the circadian mechanism is such that it is the foundation of human health. So if you don't have the light environment in check, if you don't have your circadian rhythm in check, and have all these things in check in accordance with the principles, then I mean, it's always going to be an uphill battle. And really, I don't see people getting better if they don't have that included. So that would probably be my my sending off message.
Yeah, and I don't know if you had the chance to look at any of my older episodes, but it's funny you talk about the nutrition side because I've been focusing hard on that in the last several months, like really just nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. And this is such a great change of pace from that, thinking like, oh, like there's these other things too. Maybe even if your nutrition is great, you could be missing one of these, and that could be the missing puzzle piece for you. So I'm really stoked to chat about all of that, and I think that it's just an exciting time for people to be able to get all this information and test things out, and get out there and get better because the world is sick right now. There's so many things that we can do to improve ourselves and experiment with to feel better. Because I think no matter what your goal is for the world, how you want to improve this planet or the people around you, like we need to fix people's health, and the things that you're talking about and hopefully I'm getting out there are really important for doing that. So man, Zaid, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, my friend. I definitely want to do it again sometime. This has been super fun chatting. uh, where can people find your work and support you as well?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure with this podcast episode, man. So definitely happy for round two, hopefully in the future. But people can find me on Twitter, Substack, Instagram, all at the same handle, Zaid K Dahhaj, ZAID KDAHHAJ, and then also the 2 a.m. podcast. Ironic name. Everyone asks me where does the 2 a.m. podcast come from, since you're so big on sleep. But it's kind of just trying to replicate those late night conversations with the people that are closest to you, whether you're camping or just hanging out. And we're available on all platforms. So those are the main places they can find me.
Fantastic, man. I will put the links to all of those in the show notes. Everyone go show Zaid some love. He's doing excellent work. And I'll also put, some of your threads that you've sent me over the weeks in the show notes for people to check out. Because, again, those are just super packed with value. Zaid Dahhaj, appreciate you, brother. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, brother.